What I'm about to tell you took months to untangle. Most people think this story is about a house. It isn't. It's about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you decide your life belongs to them. Even now, there are conversations from that week I still hear in my head. I am Avery, a 30-year-old architectural designer from Atlanta, and the day my father sold my $900,000 house for my sister's vacation, he expected me to thank him. I had just landed after a 3-week project in Singapore when my mother, Linda Bennett, called. "Don't go home first," Mom said. "Everyone's waiting." 20 minutes later, I walked into my parents' house and immediately knew something was wrong. There were balloons, catered food, and relatives I hadn't seen in months. My father, Richard Bennett, raised a glass the second he spotted me. "There she is," Dad announced. People clapped. I stopped near the doorway. "Did I miss a birthday?" A few people laughed. My younger sister, Claire Bennett, hugged me tightly. "This is the best day of my life." My stomach tightened. Then my brother-in-law, Ethan Mercer, smiled. "It's nice seeing your hard work finally benefit the right people." The room laughed again. I didn't. Something about the way he said it made my hands go cold. Every person in that room knew something I didn't. Before I could ask another question, Dad tapped his glass. The room went silent. "I want to thank everyone for supporting this family," he said. Then he pulled Claire closer. "Especially because somebody's finally getting the European vacation she's dreamed about." Everyone cheered. Claire wiped her eyes. "Dad, this is incredible." He smiled proudly. "You deserve it." Then he turned toward me. "And none of it would have happened without your house." The room instantly quieted. I stared at him. "My what?" Ethan stepped forward. "The Midtown townhouse. Great market, great buyer, great timing." My chest tightened. "I still own that house." Dad shook his head. "Not anymore." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "You're joking, right?" I asked. Dad looked annoyed. "Avery, not everything is about ownership." I felt my jaw tighten. "You sold my property." Dad shrugged. "Somebody had to think about the family. You certainly weren't." Several relatives looked down at their plates, and in that moment I realized Dad wasn't confused. He genuinely believed I'd been selfish for expecting my own house to remain mine. Nobody expected me to stay calm. Honestly, neither did I. My chest felt tight, but I pulled out a chair and sat down. Dad frowned. "That's it?" he asked. "No speech." I looked directly at him. "Who handled the paperwork?" Ethan answered first. "Everything was handled professionally." I nodded. "That's not what I asked." His smile slipped. Around the table, people suddenly became interested in their food. "Who signed the documents?" I asked. Dad waved a hand. "The details don't matter. The details are the entire story." Claire shifted uncomfortably. "Can we not do this tonight?" Dad sighed. "This is why people make decisions for you. You disappear for weeks and expect life to stop." I leaned forward. "Did either of you call me?" Dad answered immediately. "We thought about the family instead." Several relatives looked away. Then Ethan added, "The buyer wanted certainty." My hand stopped moving. "What buyer?" This time neither man answered. That silence told me more than words could. The next morning I drove straight to my townhouse. The building looked exactly the same. My neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, was watering plants outside. "You're back," he said. "I thought you sold the place." I stopped walking. "Why would you think that?" He looked confused. "2 men came by last week. They said the owner approved everything." My stomach tightened. "Did they mention a name?" He shook his head. That afternoon, I called my real estate and title fraud attorney, Julia Grant. After listening carefully, she asked one question. "Did you personally sign any sale documents?" "No." Silence followed. Then Julia said, "I need copies of everything." Hours later, the documents arrived. I opened the file and stared at the signature page. It looked almost identical to mine. Almost. Then I noticed the date. My hands went cold. The paperwork claimed I signed it on a Tuesday afternoon. The problem was simple. On that exact day, I was presenting a project in Singapore in front of 40 witnesses. Julia called before sunrise, papers shuffled in the background. "Avery, the signature issue isn't the biggest problem." I sat up immediately. "Then what is?" A long pause followed. "Why are your parents' property records connected to your financial information?" For a moment, I thought I'd heard her wrong. Then she emailed the documents. I opened the file and felt my stomach drop. My name appeared repeatedly beside records connected to a mansion I had never owned, all rooted through a family trust account my father opened in my name years ago. "That can't be right." Julia's voice stayed calm. I checked the corporate registry twice. Suddenly, old memories surfaced. Years ago, Dad had pushed forms across the table during family dinners. Whenever I asked questions, he smiled and said, "Just routine paperwork." I signed because I trusted him. Now I wasn't sure what I had signed. "Julia, are you saying this started years before the house?" "I think the sale exposed something much older." I stared out the window. The house wasn't the story anymore. It was only the first loose thread. By noon, Julia had a team reviewing every document connected to the townhouse and the mansion. I spent hours answering questions. "Did you authorize anyone to represent you?" one reviewer asked. No. Did you receive money from any related transactions? No. Every answer made the room quieter. Late that afternoon, Dad called. I almost ignored it. Avery, your mother is upset, he said. You didn't need lawyers, I laughed once. You sold my house. Dad ignored that completely. Families solve things privately. Then why didn't the family ask me before selling my property? Silence. Then he changed directions. You're focused on the wrong issue. Claire finally has opportunities because of this. My jaw tightened. That wasn't your decision, Dad sighed. You always act like everything belongs only to you. After the call ended, Julia looked up. We've confirmed something. My hands went cold. What? She turned her screen toward me. The same people appear throughout records tied to your parents' mansion. The next family gathering felt completely different. Nobody was celebrating anymore. Dad sat at the head of the table looking irritated. Mom barely touched her food. Claire kept staring at her phone. I arrived carrying a folder thick enough to make everyone nervous. Dad pointed at it. More paperwork, more answers, I replied. Ethan folded his arms. Most people don't investigate their own parents. Before I could respond, my cousin Renee spoke up. Most parents don't sell their daughter's house. The room froze. Ethan looked stunned. Then my Aunt Carol cleared her throat. I should have said something years ago. Nobody interrupted. Your dad once asked me whether Avery read documents before signing them. Dad's face lost color. Carol, no, Aunt Carol said quietly. You don't get to stop this now. Claire looked around the room. Wait. People knew. Nobody answered. They didn't have to. For the first time, the secret wasn't protected anymore. Over the next week, more records surfaced. Alone, none seemed important. Together, they told a completely different story. One afternoon, I sat across from Julia at a conference table covered with documents. She pointed at a timeline stretching across several years. Look at the pattern. I followed the dates, signature after signature, decision after decision. Everything pointed in the same direction. Years of people acting as though my future belonged to them. Then Julia pointed at another note. The townhouse transfer never finalized. I looked up immediately. Why? Questions about authorization stopped ownership from changing hands. I exhaled slowly. That evening Dad called again. His voice sounded different. We can still fix this. I closed my eyes. Dad, this stopped being fixable when nobody thought I deserved the truth. Silence followed. When he finally spoke, the confidence was gone. For the first time since this started, Dad sounded worried, and somehow that worried me even more. The final review meeting happened 3 weeks later. By then, nobody was arguing anymore. Too many records had been examined. Too many questions had answers. Dad sat across from me looking older than I remembered. Claire sat beside him in silence. Ethan arrived late and spent most of the meeting explaining why none of this was his responsibility. The confidence he carried at the party was gone. When the findings were presented, nobody interrupted. The townhouse sale had triggered outside review. That review uncovered years of decisions connected to my information that should never have happened without my knowledge. Dad finally looked at me. I thought I was helping everyone. I held his gaze. You weren't helping, you were deciding what belonged to everyone. Claire lowered her eyes. I didn't know, she whispered. Nobody blamed her. The truth was complicated, but one thing became clear. The house sale didn't destroy trust. It simply revealed how long trust had already been broken. A year later, my life was quieter. The townhouse remained mine, and the questions surrounding the older records were finally resolved. For the first time in years, I felt like my future belonged to me again. Dad and I still spoke occasionally, but the relationship had changed. Some trust comes back slowly, some never returns completely. Looking back, I learned something simple. Love and control are not the same thing. People who truly care about you don't make life-changing decisions for you and call it kindness afterward. They respect your choices, even when they disagree with them. If this story stayed with you, I'd appreciate it if you liked this video, subscribed for more stories, and left a comment below. Tell me this, has someone ever made a major decision for you and called it love afterward? I'd genuinely like to hear your story. My father thought he sold a house. What he really sold was the belief that nobody would ever question him.